highlights in today's show. Romantic read. We snuggle up with a good book written by Rebecca Gablé. Design Dreams. We find out what's new at the London Design Festival. Tough Tour. We see Rome and stay trim thanks to Sight-Jogging. Euromaxx highlights. And here's your host, Karen Helmstedt.
Greetings from Berlin and welcome to our highlights edition. And we start off in London, where the city's unprecedented design scene is once again in the throes of stimulation and renewal. The annual Design Festival is underway and expecting to draw some 300,000 visitors. After 5 years, this event has become a fixture on the international creative calendar, and with over 200 projects spread over town, it's a hotspot for networking and inspiration. So we did our best to scratch the surface of this amazing show.
London is bristling with design objects. One of the highlights of this year's London Design Festival is the exhibition at the Gallery of Contemporary Applied Arts in the North London district of Camden.
In year one, we had 40 projects. In year 5, we've got nearly 250 projects. So it's almost increased 5 times. I'm not sure if we've reached our ceiling yet.
New talent is groomed at Cockpit Arts in southeast London. It's the largest creative hub for designers in the UK. 165 of them are currently working here, among them Becky Oldfield. She makes lamps, curtains and cushions out of old signs and flags.
My work really begins with the idea of, I'm very interested in the notion of recycling, but the idea is that I want people to look beyond recycling and actually look into what makes an object worth saving.
Cockpit Arts provides Becky with affordable studio space, but that's not all. It also offers practical business advice to young designers, for example, in marketing matters.
We offer professional development. We have in-house business development advisors, and we offer showcasing opportunities through public access events like the Open Studios this weekend.
The designers open up their studios several times a year. Only the most talented are selected to come and work at Cockpit Arts. Linda Florence creates exclusive wallpaper. One roll is 5 meters long and costs at least €230. For Linda, Cockpit Arts is like a home from home.
I think it's mostly about the networking and actually having a kind of almost like a family of other makers here who are doing different things, making different work, but are all self-employed, and we can work together on projects.
Linda Florence and Becky Oldfield may not have to rely on Cockpit Arts too much longer. After all, they are among the few allowed to display their work at the Royal Festival Hall as part of the London Design Festival. Together with other designers, they remodeled objects found at a flea market. Bric-a-brac transformed into designer pieces, a stimulating contrast between trend and tradition. Original, light-hearted and, of course, very British.
Well, culture of quite a different kind is to be had in southern Germany's beer capital, Munich. The famous Hofbräuhaus is one of the city's best landmarks, and it has even inspired a world-famous song and, of course, the phrase "Eins, zwei, Zufahr," which translates roughly as 1, 2, and down the hatch. Well, one of the last authentic beer halls of its kind, this beloved institution, which incidentally has franchises in Genoa, Stockholm and Las Vegas, to name just a few, celebrates its 400th anniversary this year. So we stopped in to say Prost and many happy returns.
The Hofbräuhaus in the heart of Munich. This is where Bavarian tradition has been lived out and celebrated for centuries, with Oompa music, Bavarian food, and its own beer. Tourists from all over the world come here throughout the entire year.
I heard it is very famous hop, so if I want to in here in Germany, so it's very nice. I'm happy with my friend.
The Bavarian experience, complete with the traditional Schuhplattler dance.
Very nice, very decorative, very funny.
Komisch. Very emotion, a lot of emotion there. The first time, today is the first day we're here, so it's very impressive.
Locals also enjoy a trip to the Hofbräuhaus. And this is their host, Wolfgang Sperger. He's been in charge of the beer hall for 3 years now, after taking over from his parents. His parents ran the Hofbräuhaus for 20 years. Sperger says its recipe for success goes beyond its 400-year-old tradition.
Every guest is important to us, and above all, every guest is equally important. You see that at the large tables. Some 10 people sit together from different countries and get talking. They communicate with hands and feet, and that's the nice thing about the Hofbräuhaus. It brings people together, whether they're poor or rich, famous or unknown.
And where else in the world can you find beer stein safes for regulars? There are over 100 tables where some 3,500 regulars meet up. The Prince Regent's table, where there's some light-hearted political discussion going on.
We'd like to reinstate the monarchy in Bavaria. That's how it should be. The government we have at the moment isn't much good. But it'll take some time before we get the monarchy back. I think it'll take another 2 or 3 years.
The Wild crowd have been meeting up here since 1969. The staff says regulars are important for the Hofbräuhaus.
They're nice people. They come every day with a joke on their lips. They fool around and are loyal guests. The Hofbräuhaus needs its regulars.
Traude Specht started working here in the 1970s, and she's still there, although she has reached retirement age.
You get to meet lots of people. I've met so many during my lifetime. Politicians, actors, poor people, rich people. The atmosphere is unique, and I need that.
The Hofbräuhaus closes at 11:30 in the evening, but it will open again tomorrow, just as it has been for 400 years.
Bicycles have long been a favorite mode of transport here in Europe, and whether it's due to things like rising fuel prices, low maintenance costs, or simply the fact that they are a fun way to keep fit, bikes are becoming more and more popular by the minute. Here in Berlin, for instance, thanks to an improved network of bike paths, the number of cyclists is steadily increasing, and there are even some parts of town where the two-wheelers could be said to rule the road. And the cycling bug has indeed infected many a European capital. So here's more.
The Danish capital, Copenhagen, is a veritable mecca for cyclists. Some 60% of all road users here ride a bicycle, and you'll find special cycling paths all over the city. Every day, riders clock up around 1 million kilometers in Copenhagen.
Everybody in Denmark have a bicycle, or even more than one. And also the other cities in Denmark, there's a lot of people biking. But in Copenhagen, it's really improving with the problem of the traffic, the problem of parking, and they also speak about making road pricing and things like that. So I think the future for biking in Copenhagen is glorious.
More and more people are taking up cycling as bike hire outlets open up all over the French capital. The system started in the spring, and by the summer it was proving a smash hit. So far it has been used over 1 million times, although cyclists are still a minority, constituting just 1.5% of all road users on the streets of Paris.
It's a flexible service. You can get hold of a bike all over town, and you can leave it wherever you want, no matter where you live. It's a great way to travel, especially for short journeys.
London, one of Europe's busiest capitals. Here too, more and more people are getting around town by bike. In fact, 1 in 50 Londoners cycle to work, a trend encouraged by the fact that this year's Tour de France kicked off in the British capital.
The tour started here at Whitehall, went past the Houses of Parliament and Big Ben, Westminster Abbey, and then along here up Buckingham Gate to Buckingham Palace, where the Queen lives, and along through Green Park and around Hyde Park, all the way around Hyde Park and back past Buckingham Palace, and it finished in the mall opposite Buckingham Palace.
Tom Bogdanovich and his London cycling campaign would like to see more people using bikes to get around the city. The organisation publishes maps for cyclists, and its aim is to make London the capital for bike users. But that will take a lot of town planning.
We need to make conditions right in London for those people who want to cycle. And we know that 10 to 25% of people here in London would like to cycle if the conditions were right. So we have to make it easy for them. We have to give them a place at home where they can leave their bicycle. We have to have conditions on the roads where it's pleasant, comfortable for people to cycle.
When it comes to cycle paths, Berlin has got a lead on London. It's seen by many as one of the most cycle-friendly capitals in Europe. Some 12% of the journeys here are made by bike. And especially popular with tourists, organised cycle tours like this one, called Berlin on Bike. Today, a group of construction engineers from Lower Saxony are taking this tour and think it's a great way to explore the city.
I find the contrasts in Berlin very exciting. There are basically monuments to the past 750 years spread about the city. Sometimes you turn a corner and find yourself in a totally different part, aesthetically speaking.
Past the new central train station and the Brandenburg Gate, an exciting voyage of discovery for the tourists.
You see things you wouldn't see by car.
Riding alongside the River Spree, for example. Otherwise you wouldn't go there, and the weather's pretty good too.
People in Eastern Europe are hopping aboard too. In Moscow, cycling by night is especially popular with a young crowd. During the day, riding a bike around the Russian capital can be a near-death experience, so most cyclists wait until the evening. They say there is a dire shortage of cycle paths.
There are fewer cars at night. You can drive along even the widest street without a problem, and the air is a lot cleaner too.
Moscow looks really different at night. You see things you don't notice in daylight. The lovely old buildings, for instance.
And another great thing about cycling around town, you don't have to spend ages looking for somewhere to park.
Well, autumn is the time when many people in Northern Europe love to cuddle up with a good book, and currently enjoying high rankings on the German bestseller lists is Rebecca Gablé, a best-selling author based in Mönchengladbach. She writes historical novels that allow us to escape the crises of modernity for the medieval thrill of things like plagues, famine and foul teeth, a formula that's bedeviling her critics but delights her millions of readers.
Rebecca Gablé has achieved a major life goal. She gave up her regular day job to become a professional writer. Her novels are mostly set in the Middle Ages and are topping bestseller lists in Germany. Her new book delves into the Wars of the Roses period in late 15th century England.
I held off writing a novel about the War of the Roses for a long time, because it just so happens that all the major characters are either called Edward or Henry, and all the women are called Margaret. The potential for confusion was great. On the other hand, I really wanted to write the novel. The Wars of the Roses represent a hugely dramatic conflict, because all of the adversaries were related to each other.
The novel tells the story of the fictional Waringham family, charting the progress of several generations through war, intrigue, love, and passion. Rebecca Gablé has published several historical novels. She began her career writing detective stories, but she's since discovered that the Middle Ages and early modern period have much more to offer.
And with me it was almost like Harry Potter in Mr. Ollivander's shop when he picked up his magic wand for the first time. When I started, I noticed how everything just fell into place and felt right. And I realized that I'd found my genre.
Today, Gablé is working at the University Library in Düsseldorf. Sometimes her research takes her to historic sites in England, like Bosworth Field in the county of Leicester, scene of a short but bloody battle in 1485.
It was foggy and a bit chilly. The sun was just coming up. Rays of sunlight glinted on armor. And then they got down to it. I think it's such a huge contrast. If you look around, it's so peaceful. And I always wonder, whenever I'm here and I walk along the pathways, if I just stopped here and started to dig, what would I find? A rusty helmet or an old chainmail gauntlet? What happened on the spot where I'm standing now? Did someone carry out an act of great heroism, or did he just grit his teeth and do what he had to do because he felt obliged to do it? Sure, you can't actually sense the atmosphere of the battle here today, but the events of the past appear strangely vivid to me.
In her quest to create a faithful setting for her novels, Gablé visits original historic sites for a dose of inspiration. For example, here at Warwick Castle in the English Midlands.
In my book, The Fall of Kings, someone escapes captivity on horseback and has to gallop at top speed through this gateway. And as I walk through the gate now, I can really hear the echo, the clamour of the hooves on the cobblestones. I can really imagine it. It's so vivid that the actual process of writing is quite easy. I just have to write down what I see happening in my mind's eye.
Another of the author's favorite places is Reit Palace, near her hometown of Mönchengladbach, near Cologne. Gablé's enthusiasm for the Middle Ages has found broad appeal. She makes it all sound so easy, claiming that if she immerses herself enough in the historical context, the stories tell themselves.
With Richard III, it was quite easy to portray him as a villain. The latest research confirms that Richard was a monster and killed both his nephews in the Tower. He's a wonderful character for a novel.
And, of course, everyone gets what they deserve in the end. A fair punishment for the scoundrel, a happy ending for the Waringham family, and for Rebecca Gablé, a spot on the bestseller list.
And an alternative to cycling to increase the circulation. A quicker variation of the classic walking tour can be had in the Italian capital from a company called Sight-Jogging. Their motto is, when in Rome, run. And they offer a picturesque morning jog through the city, complete with historical commentary, for €70 a person, 120 if you're a group of 3. Well, those who've done it say that you're so taken up with the beautiful sights that you can almost forget you're exercising. So we donned our runners to check it out.
Rome is known as the Eternal City. Millions of tourists flock here every year. A new way of discovering the city is becoming increasingly popular. It's sight-jogging.
Hello. Hi. Hello. I'm Fabian. Hi.
Helen. Fabian Lucarino is a personal trainer and a city guide in one.
It's about an 8-kilometer stretch. Your hotel is here in the Via Boezio. Then we'll make a slight detour, turning right and then left onto the Della Conciliazione before arriving at St. Peter's Square and St. Peter's Basilica to Piazza Navona, the Pantheon and the Spanish Steps. It's quite a short stretch, really.
But first, a few warm-up exercises to stretch the muscles and ligaments. Then it's time to head off on this city tour with a difference.
The state of Vatican City came into existence in 1929 with the Lateran Treaty.
At 6:15 in the morning, there aren't many people on the street. The city is still sleeping. The sight-jogging tour continues onto St. Peter's Square. The next leg of their tour takes in the Colosseum, one of the city's main attractions. Because the sites in Rome are so close to one another, there's a lot to see on the 8-kilometer route. It's worth the effort. Of course, the jog also takes in the old city with its many narrow alleyways. Now it's 6:30 and the city is slowly waking up. It's already 20 degrees Celsius. A splash of water is very refreshing. The next stop is the Trevi Fountain, one of Rome's most famous landmarks.
Legend has it, if you throw a coin into the fountain over your left shoulder, you'll come back here someday. They fish out 3,000 euros a week.
Fishing the money out happens early every morning before the fountains start up. The last leg starts at the Piazza di Spagna and up the Spanish Steps, all 136 of them. The open-air stairway was built in the 18th century, and it's one of the most famous in the world.
We're going to conclude our tour here at the Villa Borghese with a great view over the roofs of the city.
And it's certainly a sight worth getting up early to see.
And finally, Gay Paris saw the opening of the world's largest architecture museum. La Cité de l'Architecture et du Patrimoine offers a sweeping look at architecture and building styles from the 12th century to the present day, with exhibits spread out over 11,000 square meters. French President Nicolas Sarkozy invited numerous big-name architects, including Jean Nouvel, Jacques Herzog and Rem Koolhaas, to attend the inauguration, and we had a look around the well-placed and remarkable tribute to the field.
Opposite the Eiffel Tower in the left wing of the Palais Chaillot is the new Paris Centre for Historic Monuments and Architecture. 82 million euros have been spent on the new project. Given its historic focus, it has some surprisingly modern features.
Le multimédia est ici très présent à côté de ces moulages anciens.
We have a lot of multimedia juxtaposed with historic plaster casts. We want to create a new type of museum with a new way of showcasing history that helps promote cultural exchange.
Up until a few weeks ago, everything was still under construction. It took 12 years to convert part of this 1878 building into an innovative center for architecture. The extensive renovation was masterminded by renowned French architect Jean-François Baudin.
What was difficult was that the project stretched across so many years. Sometimes we'd design a room without knowing which collection it would be housing and how much room would be needed. We had to do a lot of guesswork.
Instead of presenting the history of architecture in chronological order, the curators chose to structure the museum thematically. From plaster casts of French cathedrals to models of contemporary and futuristic buildings, the museum features projects still in the planning phase. It even presents a few ideas that will never be realized, like this never-ending tower by the celebrated French architect Jean Nouvel. A few meters away, Jean-François Baudin has designed a small world of its own. This gallery concentrates on the art of ceiling frescoes.
What we wanted to do here was create a very different kind of atmosphere, presenting the paintings in a slightly mystical context, with different lighting that approximates the original conditions. It's important to remember that these are not original works, but reproductions. Apart from a few exceptions, all our exhibits are copies and reproductions.
Visitors are impressed.
Modern architecture does have strong historical roots, so questions of scale, questions of address, doorways, columns, people's interaction with building elements, it's all good. Yeah, there is a common theme through it all.
It's very original, very new, very innovative in its design. And I hope it will attract a lot of visitors and inspire them to go and see the originals.
les vrais.
Like the Eiffel Tower. Dominating the view from the window as it does, this famous Paris landmark almost feels like part of the exhibition.
And that brings us to the end of this edition of our highlights. Hope you've enjoyed them and hope you'll be joining us next time around. Until then, all the best to you from Berlin, and bye-bye.
German Chancellor Angela Merkel has held an unprecedented meeting with the Dalai Lama at the Chancellery in Berlin. Merkel went ahead with the talks despite stiff opposition from China, which